So first of all, Amalia Pica, very welcome to Museum Haus Konstruktiv. It is a great pleasure to have you here, especially in these times we are facing now. We have during the first lockdown in Switzerland, we have developed a kind of a mediation format, which we call So Far, So Close, where we sort of try to develop something which allows the people who can't join to participate and to hear what something like behind the scene, or to get an impression of the exhibition we will actually open tomorrow. So I think we are really fortunate to have the possibility to have you here in person, and unfortunately there's no possibility for the public to join, but the exhibition will open tomorrow for the public, which is a great honor for us. So you are the winner of the 13th Zurich Art Prize, and the Zurich Art Prize is a great partnership with the Zurich Insurance Group, for which we are very thankful, because they enable us to first of all give a prize to you and to honor an artist, and also we have some budget to produce the exhibition. And so you have come up with a new work, and we are showing also an already existing work. And maybe my first question just directly goes to the new work you have conceptualized, because it also has something to do with the situation we are in. So when we started our conversation, you were keen to know what our security measures, what our COVID-19 measures are, and you have taken this into consideration. So maybe you would like to talk to us a little bit of how this project started.
Yeah, sure. I also want to say that I'm super honored, obviously, to have won this prize. It's a great recognition, and I feel very fortunate. And I also feel like to have my work housed in this museum, to be aligned in this tradition, it's also very enriching for my work. So I'm really thankful for the historical dialogue, also for your team and for you for making this possible. As we said, things are strange, but I am very glad that we have found a way of making it happen. Even if there's not a big opening, the museum will be open and people can come and see it. And those things that maybe we took for granted, and I'm now very thankful for, because I believe that, after the first lockdown and looking into another possible lockdown, we are all hungry for real experience. So it is great for me to be here, actually.
Yeah, I think the whole art world has really been brought to a rethinking of the functioning of the whole art world. And we all had to pause and to think of new strategies, and we have also realized how much we actually miss the real contact with art. And everybody has tried to sort of come up with some new formats, but they actually just made us understand how important a real contact is. I think in England there was about the same feeling, yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So when we were already talking, but we were about to go into production when the first wave happened upon us, and so the work itself, the new work, which is called Rearranging the Conference Table, has to do with sort of previous work that I was making about trying to look at the role of bureaucracy in our lives, and how sometimes pleasure is excluded from bureaucratic and corporate culture, and how injecting joy and pleasure and happiness or enjoyment into those processes could be a form of resistance. So it was about sort of introducing formal play and pleasure in simple things such as form as color, and color as ways of fueling rearrangements that would maybe hint at different ways of sitting around the conference table. So when we started talking, the idea was maybe to have a more, a larger, more expanded version of a performance. The work itself is 14 conference tables, so they are office tables that usually come in very dull gray or wooden like colors that I basically intervened to made into sort of geometrical surfaces that can come together and arrange different formations and patterns. And initially we thought, okay, there will be a moment, a performance where the guards of the museum, who had kindly agreed to bring the work to life, so I'm super thankful to them, we're going to perform this choreography of tables. And then we realized that maybe the performance that really invites presence and it needs presence was maybe not the right format during this time. But I also didn't want to completely exclude it, because I believe a lot of my work has to do with the exploration of the need and the codependency between people and objects.
So your work is very often very performative, or at least it has this participative mode. No?
Exactly. So it has sort of this activation. I like to think about it as sculpture, but also performative. So it has these moments where the objects are turned on and off, if you want, by performers. So what we follow in the regulations and stuff, it really did feel like it was very important to rethink the performance that in itself is sort of an invitation to sit at a table in a different way, to sort of think how we could still bring people together. So the way that we're doing it now is that sort of performance got stretched into the whole duration of the exhibition. So we incorporated the duration of the exhibition into the piece itself. And so there's one movement a day that the guards perform, always at the same time. And I think what became sort of clearer was that I have always been interested in bureaucracy because it has a sort of a double aspect. One which can feel oppressive and negative, and in the case of office life, routine-like. And the other one that actually has to do with being part of a bigger system and of a support system. So being included of something. If one cannot partake in the bureaucratic machine, then actually one's life is very, very difficult.
Mm-hmm. And we are also, I think, like, if you say you've always been interested in bureaucracy, it is, in fact, something which surrounds our everyday life. It's just like we are more aware of it or less aware of it, and depending on in which country you live, it can mean hell for you, or it can make life easier or not at all. So I think it has this wide range of what bureaucracy, how much it can interfere in people's life. Have you done other works also with bureaucracy in?
Yeah. So the maybe I would say that the main interest started with the work that we are also showing here as part of the exhibition, which is Joy in Paperwork. And it was a work that I sort of created as a result of me applying for British citizenship, which was a very long, painful, scary process. And it felt very overwhelming. So basically, as an artist, you don't have a job contract. So I had to really create and retrace a paper trail of what I had done in the last 10 years to sort of really be able to show to the Home Office what it is that I do and why it is that I travel to places.
Mm-hmm. So you had to actually convince the bureaucratic people that your job comprises traveling, and,
exactly.
And you actually had to negotiate what an artistic work is like.
Exactly. And so I had to, speak to every single institution I had ever worked with, whether they invited me for an exhibition or a lecture, to write a letter saying that this had been the case. So this was a lot of paperwork. And while I was doing that, the first time it got rejected on the basis I had traveled too much. So my lawyer advised that I stayed put. And this is what I did when I created Joy in Paperwork. So I started sort of making these drawings with stamps that I use for bureaucratic purposes in different languages that my friends and family were sending me from all these places that I couldn't go to, but that they were traveling to. And I sort of started making these drawings that first I thought were going to be based on the organizing principle of the grid, as sort of that bureaucratic, oppressive organizational system. And then I was slowly going to be breaking it. But actually the drawings took a life of their own, and the joy took over. And so they fell into figuration and became funnier, and sometimes they became volcanoes, and sometimes they became cacti, and then went back to the grid. And
So actually, I think it's really interesting that you say you start with a grid, so with kind of system, with a kind of order, and then you went more and more into more joyfulness, into more free forms, and in
so let's say the
forms.
escapist aspect of the project itself took over, which is also, I think, maybe what I needed.
But it was also like, if you say you have the drawings, which a drawing is something in an A4 paper which you can take with you. So it's a form of the smallest atelier in a certain way. You can have it all the time, and also instead of pencil, you were using stamps, yeah, all kinds of stamps. So you could always, there's a mobile aspect to it, which
yeah, but I mean, to be honest, the format was mostly chosen in relationship to office culture, so
and to not being mobile. So.
Exactly, to not being mobile, but mostly to reference that sort of A4 format of the printer paper and the office. So a lot of that particular work sort of was looking at the material culture of office life, which at the time that I was making that work, it felt like something that could feel oppressive for people. But now again, sort of at the moment where we're making this exhibition, after sort of working with the conference tables that are also part of office material culture, suddenly everybody's working from home. And there is this newfound nostalgia maybe for office life. And that is really an aspect of the work that really came through the COVID situation, in which with the person I collaborated with to make the animation that was sort of here to hint at the performative aspect of the work when the performance cannot be full-blown scale. Who is Rafael Ortega. We also ended up doing this audio work.
You were doing what, sorry?
An audio work in the gallery.
Audio work.
Yes.
Maybe we should go the steps a bit slower, because just for the people who are hearing it, that they sort of can follow it. One step back, so you said the office tables, we have prefabricated forms, so they are like half circles, they're squares, that trapeze, yeah. And then you have decided to give them also a pattern.
Yes.
Which was a decision you had to take it sometimes. You had to decide on what form and what color and what pattern do you take. How did you come to these?
So they were sort of, I always thought about them as the patterns as excuses for the kaleidoscopic arrangements. So they're thought also in relationship of how they will combine with each other. And the colors themselves are mostly linked to what's available in terms of Formica. Mm-hmm. And so the color also appears in the legs as well. So this is really sort of a formal exercise.
Mm-hmm. But then you have sort of tried it out, you know, like when we see the video, what you did with Rafael Ortega. So the video is understood, if I'm correct, as a kind of a sketchbook, like
exactly.
a video sketchbook.
So it's a study for the performance.
Yes.
So what you see in the film is models of these tabletops and the different rearrangements and the hands trying out different things. So the performance itself is contained in the film as the sequence, but the film has or explores other possible formations, which obviously are endless in terms of the possibilities that in which these tables can come together.
Mm-hmm. Did you have formations which at the end you didn't like at all and you took it out of the script?
To be honest, no. There are moments that I like more than others, but because a lot of the formations are a transition for another formation, maybe I don't like the transition as much as I like the formation, but I sort of accepted them as part of the there is something about the pleasure that I found in the evolving nature of the formations that really sort of kept me from being critical in terms of, do I like this one more than the other one? It's sort of an acceptance.
Yeah, which makes a nice link to the joint paperwork work, because also there
it's
you have
stream.
It's a stream. You have I forgot, it was like 1,000,
Yep.
about 1,000 archive pieces.
Yeah.
So it's really many. And here you have the table formations. You also have a lot of formations, and you have decided for 34, which will actually.
Yeah, I think it's 35 in the end.
It's 35
yes.
at the end.
Yeah.
I might have missed that one. So we have like these 35 formations, which are actually done here in space. So,
Exactly.
One per day, always at the same time, and they are actually little, smaller and longer. Formation. So we are really excited to do it, and we are also recording it. Will this recording be an extra film? Do you notice already, or is it more documentation?
So we're thinking that there will be either film or stop motion, like the film is in itself, and it's sort of it's open-ended. I don't know where this documentation will end up, but it seems like a shame to completely not document it and see where it goes.
Yeah.
Especially because I'm not going to see it myself. So it's sort of a way of also remaining in the exhibition. Because as an artist, it's always funny, no? When your job is done when the exhibition starts.
Oh, yeah. And then you have to let it go.
Exactly.
It's like you have to let your children go at some point. Yes. And is it also that like one work sort of evolves in another work? Like because when we have these two works in the exhibition, I sort of have the feeling like the subject of bureaucracy and the stamp work and the conference table works, they're sort of so well linked, but there are 4 years in between. So I sometimes have the feeling that it's maybe not just for you, but I think for many artists, that if there's one work, it already bears the idea for another work, which is maybe done at another time.
Yeah, I completely believe that. I like to think about it as a sort of strings that you pull from, but they are not like a line. I think when I first started as an artist, my work doesn't always look like itself. So I was anxious about how this body of work that looks so disparate from each other, how was it going to come together? And I think I have come to accept that my work and my mind and my process don't move in a linear way. So it's not A, B, C, but it's rather a constellation of thoughts and ideas. And so sometimes I will be doing something that I was thinking about 5 years before. And in between, I've done and opened other windows. So it's not really a line. They are interconnected, but I think the constellation it's a way that is why for me it's always been very difficult to think about the publication of my work, because a book, in itself has a narrative which is from beginning to end, and it always feels difficult to impose one set narrative.
That's, I think it's something to work on, how to make it into a book at some point. Good question. Do you also have something like a sketchbook for all your ideas? I'm just thinking of it because we are showing at the same time an exhibition by Leon Buida, and he's a very, in a specific sense, he's a very classical artist. He's a constructivist concrete artist, and I have come across many constructivist concrete artists, and many of the older generation, they really have something like a sketchbook. And in the sketchbook, there are sometimes works from a long period. And they also tell me that once in a while, something has been taken out from the sketchbook, which is dating already a couple of years. So I was wondering if you have any form of where you store your ideas for an eventual later use.
So I am, to my own detriment, I'm not very organized with my ideas. They reappear and they come back, and I have maybe too many sketchbooks, maybe not enough. I write emails to myself.
But you do have sketchbooks.
I do have sketchbooks, but not all my ideas make it to the sketchbook. Sometimes I send an email to myself. Sometimes I take a picture of something.
I see.
Sometimes I write it on a napkin, you know. And so it's a bit more chaotic than that. On a personal level, not on other artists, because I have really enjoyed the archive and the sketchbooks of other artists when I've had access to them. I personally don't believe in overstaticizing the process so much. It's almost like I want to reserve a bit of privacy. What happens in my studio and what happens in my sketchbooks, it's my kitchen.
Yes.
I would like just for you to sit for dinner, sort of thing. Okay. I'm not... and so this, for example, complicates formats that are very beloved and for very good reasons in our artistic community, like the studio visit. I'm actually not so keen on having people in the studio because then I feel like I have to clean for visitors. And, you know, my process maybe is not as charming as other people's processes, but it works for me.
It's probably also because if I understand your way of working correctly, I think you are more a conceptual artist, if we put this label, or if you use this label. And if your work is focused on the concept first, so there's less object-based, there's less drawings or sketchbooks or whatever. So also the media range you're using is a vast range. So it really, I always had the impression that the media is chosen later. So first you have the idea, you work on the concept, and then you choose the medium which is best for what you want to express.
So it's not such a specific, it doesn't always happen in the same order. Sometimes, ideally, they kind of go together. You have maybe the first hint of the idea, and then you try the material, and the material itself makes you rethink the idea. So because I don't know, this is, I think, when form has enormous potential to help a dialogue of thought or to help you perform or develop thought, in that you might be moving some material around and thinking, oh, maybe this is what it means. And then so it's feeding, it's sort of not always the idea came first and then the material. But what I will say is that it's also maybe because we have in our minds maybe these big studios of artists who have a lot of space to explore all these different possibilities. In my case, I have to remain very flexible. My studio has to be open for all the different kinds of material explorations that I do alongside with my idea exploration. So the studio itself, like the work, I always think about it in relationship to architecture as if it was a tent rather than a set station where I have like the painting station and the model station. It's not. It's the studio is constantly morphing and being packed away and being popped open again. And so the studio itself is completely like a blank canvas. It has to go back to zero to sort of reemerge. It's not a studio where you can really see the trace of past projects. I need to put everything away. So in a sense, I think, yes, you're right. There isn't that sort of relationship to form, but it is also because I'm constantly an amateur at the form that I choose.
So you start and experiment the material. There's one thing we have to take in again, which we don't see at the moment because we are talking, but usually there is a sound when people come and see the exhibition and they see the arranged formation, which will be different every day, but you also have a sound. And I was really, the sound is amazing because it first of all fills up the room completely, and then you listen a little bit and you immediately discover it is office sound. You hear like keyboards, you hear phone calls, you hear people talking, and I was completely fascinated to learn that it's actually a ready-made, which you found on the internet. No?
Yeah, so when we were discussing with Rafael about the film, of course, the film really falls into a tradition of geometric animation, and we could have gone more like in the jazz way and commissioned maybe a piece of music. And in fact, Rafael really used jazz to edit it, so you really feel the rhythm. But we really felt like it needed to hint at the original content, no? Which is this idea of the office table and office life. And through exploring the internet, Rafa came across these audios of people who have been downloading office sounds to be able to feel more comfortable when working at home. So it turns out that a lot of people are missing being in the offices and they need it for concentration. So basically that is what the audio is different downloads from the internet of 8 hours of office life that people are just now using to be able to concentrate at home.
Which also makes them feel less alone. No? So they have
absolutely less alone. So it's a new bucolic in a very strange way.
Amazing, I think. And then you have implemented also these 2 ladders where people are able to move 5 steps up.
Yeah.
And they get a view from above.
From above. Yeah, I mean, it's because the tables themselves are obviously at a height that is conceived to be used as a table. But I always thought when they come together, it's quite nice to have a more aerial view. So we just resorted to, again, these 2 ready-mades, but they become, I also think they bring a different scale to the exhibition, but they bring the possibility of an overview, which I'm.
And it's also nice because they make you like we have this saying like if you go a bit higher, you take the level from above, you see the world also a bit different.
Exactly.
It's like a step back and have a different reflection.
But it also has, I think, to do with this new thing that popped through these restrictions on our everyday life, which is this sort of romanticism and nostalgia for being together. So I sort of, when I stand on this viewed platform, I sort of think of, you know, the previous image of the romantic painting where there's this small human figure looking into the abyss. So now this sort of sense of the social life that we used to have coming together, discussing, sitting around the round table, is something that we're sort of contemplating.
Yeah,
in
or like a Caspar David Friedrich painting, like the monk on the sea, where his the whole discussion about the sublime was linked to it, and maybe we are now in a time where we have a different kind of the big unknown we are facing and we have to deal with.
I mean, in a strange kind of way, it's still of a natural order because the virus is of a natural order.
Absolutely.
But I think what has become something that we long for is something that we didn't know we had.
Yeah. I have to stop here because our time is already over. I thank you very, very much. It was a great pleasure and very interesting. Thank you.
No, thank you for having me, and thank you again to your team for making this possible, and to you, of course, and to the insurance group for honoring me with this prize.
Thank you. We'll pass it on. Thanks.